Word Balloon is brought to you by the League of Word Balloon Listeners.
Yes, indeed. Please stand by. It's time once again for To the Outer Limits, the show about nothing, the show about the early 60s Outer Limits. It's not that show. This isn't a Seinfeld podcast. No. John Suntra's here with Gabe Hardman. It's totally my fault. I apologize. I'm running on empty. But we are here today to talk about episode 8, The Human Factor. One of the lesser Outer Limits episodes, but it's just me and Gabe tonight. Good to see you, Gabe. How are you?
Oh, good to see you as well.
I apologize for being late.
No, it's all right. Look, nobody wanted to show up for this one. This is such a lousy episode that just you and me, and you fell asleep. So
this is true. That's how excited I was to do this episode. That's very true.
So this one is The Human Factor. It is. I'm just going to launch right into it. I'm going to take control of this podcast so that John can get his bearings.
You should, because I am still loading images as we're speaking. So yes, go ahead.
Yeah, it's I believe it's the first episode produced after the pilot. It's a little unclear to me, but it's the first or the second. And it's a bizarre sort of episode that doesn't work really at all. And I think the production of it was kind of a mess as well. It's about a psychiatrist who is doing this experimental procedure inexplicably at a base on the North Pole, where like as some sort of like a diagnostic tool, he can see someone else's consciousness through putting on a little hat like this.
Yes.
And then there's also a story about a soldier who has who is guilt-ridden over the death of somebody under his command off at this Hella Isthmus, this mountain nearby, or whatever, and he sees the guilt ghost of this guy, right? Who occasionally shows up and points a finger at him.
Yes.
Things. You would think that these things would dovetail together in a way that was interesting and satisfying, and you would be wrong. They just, I don't know what the hell happened. Like there are multiple ideas that never really come together, and this is the first one that's really just kind of a mess.
I would agree, and it's a shame because it has some interesting cast members. where if they had gotten a better script, it might have been a decent episode. We've got an incredibly young Ivan Dixon.
Yeah, from Hogan's
Heroes, a fine actor. I mean, we all remember him mostly as Kinch from Hogan's Heroes, and it's such a shame. Of course, he did a great Twilight Zone, the Tall Wish, where he's the boxer and a little boy wishes, he's losing a fight. He's kind of a washed out boxer and stuff, and and all of a sudden he's the winner, and he knows that he lost the fight, but this little kid who still believes in wishes is able to change reality.
Are there Are there any stories about boxers that aren't about a boxer and a little boy? I think they all are about that, right? Like that's the only way to tell that story.
Champ.
But
thank you, Ricky Schroeder. You're right, and then of course Jackie Cooper, the original champ.
Yeah, it goes all the way back. So I mean, this is but it's also the first one that chronologically the way they shot it, the first one Conrad Hall photographed. It's got Sally Kellerman, who was great, and but it just it doesn't gel. Here we have on the screen a nice Bergman-esque Sally Kellerman.
Indeed.
As far as the plot of this thing goes, I mean, that's ultimately what happens is there's the guilt-ridden soldier who seems to be going crazy. He's taken to the psychiatrist, who then when he's using his mind-reading diagnostic tool, there's an inexplicable avalanche, and then their minds
swap.
Right, but what does this is just in a way looking at this episode, particularly in relation to the other episodes, is it can be a little informative in that this is how something isn't a story, yes. It's like when you have all of these elements, but the elements don't dovetail and they aren't supporting a central idea, but they're and certainly just the idea that the guy, why is there a psychiatrist at this Cold War era North Pole outpost who is doing these experiments on? It just doesn't make a hell of a lot of sense.
No, it is like you said, it's disjointed. It's just not good.
The thing is him wanting to the soldier guy who's now in the body of the psychiatrist, and the psychiatrist is put in jail in the body of the soldier. So the soldier guy wants to get this atomic cartridge and blow up that mountain, blow up the isthmus thing, and the Hekla Isthmus, which is I like the name. I mean, apparently it's an Icelandic Hekla is Icelandic for some gateway to purgatory or something like that, which is highfalutin stuff that doesn't really pay off. But when I was talking about how the production was a mess on this, one of the things that happened was, in the beginning of the episode, there's the ghost, the kind of which we may have an image of there.
Yeah, unfortunately, the images weren't uploading. I've uploaded everything that you've done, but unfortunately, that did not work.
So
I'll keep trying though.
They initially what's in the episode is basically a guy in a terrible looking guy in a suit who in a kind of double exposure who the ghost who just kind of points at him and goes away, and it feels like, at least at the beginning of the episode, it feels like this is some kind of alien supernatural type of thing that's going to come back in some way and be the big element for it, the big kind of fantastical element. It does not. Yep. But initially, what they had planned to do was make this make a kind of full scale model guy of an ice covered man whose eyes glowed, and they actually did make this thing, and there was going to be some kind of low tech ghost cabinet type of illusion that would through which it would appear in the show, as opposed to the kind of optical effect. And for reasons that I still can't quite figure out, they made the thing, they spent tons of money on it, and ended up never using it in the show. And there are photos of it, which actually look, the thing that they built looks better than what's in the show, but it wouldn't have made a hell of a lot of difference in the long run.
I've singled you out, Gabe. So if you can find the image, I'm happy to bring you a solo there for it. There we go. Yes, indeed. Very good.
This one is the one the actor that was in the show, and the one with Sally Kellerman is the one that they
yes.
You can't really see that well, but
no, but it was the solo shot especially was a good one. So there we go.
So it's not much of an episode.
There we go. There's the one with him and Sally.
Here we go. That's the good shot of the one that they built, not the guy not the one that's in the thing.
Right. And also again, Gary Merrill is our doctor.
Yes.
And our soldier is Harry Gardino, who I unfortunately cannot I don't have an image of, but great character actor. Again, that's the thing, man. It's the seeds are there, but
he's
not a good script.
He's a great character actor, but he gives kind of a terrible performance.
Yeah.
I mean, like particularly early on. I mean, he's playing it very big. He's playing it, as crazy or whatever, right? In a very overt way. And I understand kind of the storytelling thing there, where he had to come across in a distinctive way, so that when they change minds, it's clearer that they're they're able to distinguish their personalities, even though they're the opposite actors playing. That said, it's awful. It's just terrible. Like I think he gives a pretty terrible performance at the beginning of it, and the episode suffers from a kind of conventional early '60s stuff with Gary Merrill reading Sally Kellerman's mind at the beginning and realizing that she's in love with him, and and it's just really not great stuff. And seriously, Gary Merrill is the biggest schlub in this thing. Like he has this kind of like weirdly shaggy hair. He's not for the early '60s. He doesn't look like
he's not appealing. Yeah, neither guy are very appealing, frankly.
No,
Harry Gardino also a very Joe Bag of Donuts kind of looking.
Yeah, totally. And this script went through a big rewrite, and and initially there was supposed to be, I think there was supposed to be two female doctor characters who were both competing for his affections, and it's like I mean, what the fuck? Like,
let's take a look at our heartthrob. There he is.
Yeah, it's the credibility is low enough for Sally Kellerman being interested in this guy, much less two women going nuts for this schlub.
But if anything, really the ghost looking pretty good at this point.
That the Guilt Ghost Iceman would have been a much more interesting way to go with it.
Exactly. We're sending you two kids to Acapulco, just like the dating game.
Yes.
A prize package designed especially for you. Jeez. No, you're right about that. Now, so again, I guess the guy who directed this, Albert Bieberman.
Abner Bieberman, yeah.
Abner Bieberman.
Abner Bieberman. So, like, he was an actor in, he was in, he was kind of a small-time actor, and he was that you mostly wouldn't recognize him from anything. And he also had a kind of, journeyman directing career.
So is this Bieberman here?
Yes. So that's him. And he was the image that we have up here is him in the Val Lewton produced movie, The Leopard Man. So that's the one place that I know him from, because I love the Val Lewton movies, that series of RKO atmospheric horror movies.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so like he's in that. That's what I know him from. And then he's the one who directed this. But he and the writer, these are their only Outer Limits credits, because I read a quote saying that Bieber was a little out of his depth with this. I think he was probably a little more of a traffic cop director, and and this show is a little more ambitious. Plus, he obviously wasn't saddled with the greatest script.
Michael Cooper, great observation. The most interesting thing from this episode is they cast a black man as the expert on the atomic device. At times, I believe that was somewhat unusual, but bad episode overall. Absolutely, man.
Yeah, I totally agree, and it is great that they just treat the African American character as like a smart guy who's there to do his job, and not there's nothing that's that undermines his character or anything. I mean, it's a small part, but he's treated well.
Isham Zubi, I love this observation. It's really a simple reaction. I have to admit, I was sucked into the love story.
That's amazing. Well, that's good. Good. Look, I'm just, I guess I'm just coming at it with this extreme antipathy towards Gary Merrill that's clouding my mind.
I hear you, man. And frankly, I gotta say, as character actors go, can't say I've ever been a fan of Gary Merrill's. I've certainly seen him in various things. This is interesting. Real fast, he says this episode made him think of the Prisoner Mind Swap episode. Sure, do not forsake me, oh my darling.
Right.
Which is that's a good mind swap.
Yeah, it's a good episode, though. That's the big distinction.
So, I remember that very well. That's a really good episode.
But so like, I don't know. I mean, like as far as Gary Merrill goes, I mean, like he's in All About Eve, which is a movie people like for its kind of kitschiness and stuff.
Oh God, yeah, great movie.
And it's not my favorite thing, but I know why people like it. And he met and married Betty Davis on that movie, and they were apparently had a 10-year fractious relationship before they split up.
I didn't realize that. That's amazing.
Yeah, he was in Where the Sidewalk Ends, the Preminger movie, which is the same year.
Yes.
There's just, I don't know. He's just one of those actors that, like, I get him confused with other actors. I think, wait, wasn't he that guy who married Lucille Ball? But no, I don't know.
Harry Morton, of course.
And then, Harry Gardino, who's in Dirty Harry. I know he was a friend of John Cassavetes. I've been reading this John Cassavetes biography.
Which sounds great, man. Yeah.
And Cassavetes got him cast in Johnny Staccato. So I've brought up Johnny Staccato again on this podcast.
Love that show. Again, so ready to do the Johnny Staccato podcast follling our.
It's up next. I'm telling you, it's up next. I'm just pre-researching.
He had his own series, The Reporter.
Oh.
It was only in 1964, only half a season, 13 episodes. He played Lou Sheldon in The Reporter. No, and a lot of television credits of guest stars. Yeah, I mean, all of Marcus Welby, young Dr. Kildare, even the fine CB radio classic of the 70s with Claude Akins, Moving On.
Huh. Wow. Not Jonathan Demme's Citizen Band, which is really the superior CB radio. So, like, one thing Harry Gardino was in that I have not seen, but I would love to see. It's actually on YouTube, but the version on YouTube is so unbelievably bad. I couldn't watch it. But it's this movie called Jigsaw, and Michael J. Pollard is in it, as well as Bradford Dillman. And it's from 1968, and it's like it's about a guy who inadvertently takes LSD and wakes up with amnesia in the middle of some murder plot, right? So basically, it is a remake of the Cornell Woolrich Nightmare story, but as a psychedelic movie. And that is the most appealing sounding thing to me. I'm sure it's embarrassing. It was also directed by James Goldstone, who directed one of the earlier Outer Limits, I think the Architects of Fear.
Oh, wow.
So, like, I'm dying to see this movie. There doesn't seem to be any good way to see it, though. But, like, just to digress a little bit, there have been a couple of, there have been a couple other good adaptations of that story, like legitimate adaptations of the story. I mean, there was Nightmare with Edward G. Robinson and Kevin McCarthy in 1956. But the one that I really, really like, or I don't know that it's good exactly, but I really like it, is Fear in the Night from 1947. And because DeForest Kelley is the star of the movie, right? Like, and it's the nightmare stories. It's guy wakes up. Did he commit he can't remember who he is, and did he commit a murder? And he remembers little things about a mirrored room and about a key or something like that. And I remember seeing this. I was like a teenager when I first moved to New York, and one of those film noir festivals I went to, they ran this movie, and I was blown away that DeForest Kelley was the star of the movie. And as I remember, it was a pretty decent little movie.
Harry Gardino, other credits, he was in the police procedural soap opera Madigan with Henry Fonda and Inger Stevens. He was in is it Greatest Story Ever Told, or he's Barabbas in one of the great Bible films.
King of Kings, maybe?
It was King of Kings. Very good. Yep. It was indeed King of Kings. So yeah, that was a big role for Harry. Did again tons of television, Naked City, The Untouchables, Greatest Show on Earth, Ben Casey. Bob Hope Presents the Chrysler Theater. Hi, ladies and gentlemen. Fantastic. FBI, Ephraim Zimbalist Jr., certainly. Name of the Game.
Oh, yeah.
Another great wheel show of its day and everything. So, yeah. And, of course, he's in Dirty Harry. I totally forgot. He's wrestler in Dirty Harry.
Yeah. And I think he's in others of that series, right?
Yeah, Callahan. You're out of control, Callahan.
I don't love those movies. They're all right. I'm not the biggest right-wing revenge fiction guy.
Well, and it's funny because literally earlier this week I was talking to Jerry Conway about the creating the Punisher and the Punisher's place in today's society, and certainly again Punisher came of that time as well.
Yeah. I mean, absolutely nothing against Jerry Conway, who I have an enormous.
Oh, he's the best.
But I hate the Punisher too. So anyway, Sally Kellerman. Despite this very unforgiving script, I think she's great. I think she's great in this. I'm a big fan of hers. She was actually she was also a student of Jeff Corey from last week's Obit.
Absolutely.
Her
ingenue roles, she was always great. She's in the second Star Trek pilot, Where No Man Has Gone Before. Yeah. She and Gary Lockwood are kind of the antagonists in the story and everything. Oh God, this is hilarious. Abner Beaverman is a 60s name if I ever heard one. I don't disagree, sir. And then Jamie says, I have to confess I've never seen The Outer Limits. I just always listen to John talk. Oh, thanks, buddy. Love how knowledgeable and passionate you are. Best laugh in the comic scene. Thanks, man. Gabe is especially tonight doing the heavy lifting. And as always for this Outer Limits series, and truly it's one of the reasons why, Jamie, I've asked Gabe when he suggested that we should, or that there should be an Outer Limits podcast. And I'm like, well, Gabe, from Scene Missing and stuff like that, this is the guy you want talking about the Outer Limits. I really love how Gabe studies it. He studies the scripts that aren't produced. If this is your first time watching, Jamie, it's pretty cool, man. And yeah, I hear it. And
also, check out the show. Just don't watch this episode first.
Right. I mean, well, that's and again, I'll save it for next week. I found this amazing clip of Robert Culp talking about all of his Outer Limits episodes, and next week we will be talking about Robert Culp's third Outer Limits, and the weakest, unfortunately, but still
interesting.
Still interesting, absolutely.
I mean, it's more interesting than this one is.
Yes, and Stephen makes a good point. Of course, Sally Kellerman, the first Hot Lips in the Altman movie of MASH.
Yeah, and Sally Kellerman was sort of part of that, Altman world, of that kind of repertory company of actors. Her first film credit is, though? Reform School Girl. AIP, American International Picture, 1957. So significantly earlier than this, right? I mean, she was still in one of her earliest roles here.
Yeah.
This episode got her the footage from this episode got her signed to William Morris. She didn't even have representation for this. So this actually really helped launch her career, but she started 7 years earlier in Reform School Girl, which I, because I'm very serious about the research for this show, I watched Reform School Girl. She is one of the Reform School girls.
Is that a Mamie Van Doren vehicle?
No, it's a nobody Van Doren vehicle. Like there's no one in it. It's like a super cheap,
Exploitation
movie programmer thing. There's like, and there are like 12 reform school girls, and Sally Kellerman is always far at the back of the group because she's clearly the tallest. And I think she has like one or two lines in it. I don't know if there was a real point in me doing that research, but I did it anyway.
I'm proud of you. That's amazing. Again, her younger roles, she was, a lovely ingenue kind of thing. And you go back and again, watch her solo shots in various TV shows of the era and stuff. And she was, really quite capable. She was great.
Always been great. I think she's like, up through the 70s stuff with Altman and even movies I don't love, like I think Alan Rudolph's Welcome to L.A. or something.
Well done.
Yeah. But
back to school, of course. She's the love interest for Rodney. Hey, how are you?
Yeah, that's right. So yeah, thankless and conventional part in this, but she did a good job. I think she, she really comes across on screen, I think.
Totally, man. I'm trying to jump from Harry's IMDb to her various credits, and right now my computer's fighting me.
Right. Another guest spot. I did not watch this, but she was in I'm Dickens, He's Fenster.
Oh my God, I know that show well.
With John Aston and Marty Ingalls.
Well done.
Things that I barely know, but I've heard John Aston talk about whenever he's interviewed. I haven't. I don't even know how available that thing is, but it's just
not very. I think there might be one or two episodes on YouTube, but that show, Marty Ingalls, the Mr. Shirley Jones, if you will.
Yes.
And of course John Aston. Not a two-hander 60s sitcom that is kind of known in comedy circles, but I would not say like the greatest.
John Aston prior to the Addams Family, right? Yeah,
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he's like young bachelor in the same way that he's in Touch of Mink, the Doris Day Cary Grant vehicle that does not age well at all.
It doesn't.
Let's see here. I got more of Sally's stuff. Lots of movies. Where's TV? Oh God! Well, and again, now I'm in the '90s. She was in Diagnosis Murder. Of course, she was. Again, a subject that came up. Speaking of Jerry Conway, because he was a writer on that and Father Dowling Mysteries. But back to our points, Bonanza certainly. She's in the Boston Strangler.
Oh, really?
The Tony Curtis movie, yeah.
Right.
Wow. Steiger?
Yeah. No. Who's the director? Is it?
No. Of Strangler, stand by.
Richard Fleischer?
Very good. Richard Fleischer, indeed. 1968. Very good. Absolutely. Yes, Star Trek. Okay, they mentioned that. I Spy.
Yeah.
Shenandoah, Ben Casey. The classics. Absolutely. The Giant, says Ed Leonard Nimoy says in Star Trek 4.
Yes.
No question. But yeah, man, no, she's The Invaders. She did an episode of The Invaders. That's a great sci-fi 60s show. I don't know if you've ever sat down with the 2 seasons of The Invaders.
Never really watched it. It's one of those things I know of that I've never really tracked down. That's an alien invasion conspiracy?
Yeah. I can't remember his name, Roy Finnis's character, but yeah, he's the only one that's aware and sees the evidence of an alien invasion, and they're all in human form, and it's a nice alien invasion conspiracy television show. They've been running it on MeTV pretty consistently on Saturday nights. So yeah, that's another good one. Yeah, I unfortunately don't have a lot to say about the Human Factor. I have to admit. This might be one of our shortest episodes.
This is going to be the short episode. It is. There's not that much to say about it. I mean, we're gonna there were 30 something episodes in the season or whatever, or 29 episodes in the season. There are going to be some lousy ones, and it's not irrelevant that this was like the first one that they produced or after the pilot, and it's the ninth one or whatever that they because they knew it wasn't very good, so they held on to it as long as they could, and they just bumped up stuff that was better so that they would have a more of a runway.
Robert Culp said as well, and I watched his whole interview, knowing that he would have said something about this Outer Limits thing, but he said the same thing about I Spy, that the first one they conceived was so bad that and they really Cosby was completely raw as an actor and really had to grow into the part, but also that the writing was like 70-30 serving Culp's character more than Cosby's, and he's like, no, this really has to be 50-50. Right. And he wrote several episodes of I Spy, and this first one, like tonight's Human Factor, they ended up burying at Christmas, and it was the first one that was written and produced, but it was just so bad, and thankfully, things got better. And that does, I guess, happen a lot in shows. That's kind of why with new shows, you kind of hope, especially shows that aren't one long story arc and stuff, you do notice, that the first efforts are sometimes the worst ones, and they bury them further.
Well, I mean, you're pulling everybody together for the first time. It's you're trying to, although that's what you're doing on a feature, but the reality is you don't have you don't have the time, you don't have the pre-production time, you don't have people are. I mean, you can develop the script for quite a while, but people are coming in and they have a week to prep the thing or whatever.
I was going to ask, have you noticed in your research how many days they would spend on an Outer Limits? Was it 6 days? Was it
6? So, pretty, that's not a lot considering,
no.
I think we've talked about this a little in the past, but just that every week you're doing a whole new thing. There are no standing sets. There are no continuing characters to go back to. There's just not, you're basically doing it from scratch every single week. So that's a lot,
And especially in this era, so many of those shows would start with one lead actor and then become two-handers, where like 77 Sunset Strip, or even better, Maverick. Maverick started as a James Garner vehicle. They shot like 5 or 6 and realized they could not maintain the schedule with one crew. Right. And so they invented the brother, Bart Maverick, played by Jack Kelly. And then it became every other week it would be a Garner and then a Kelly episode and then a twofer where they would both be in it. And again, Sunset Strip acted the same way. You had Efren Zimbalist Jr. and Robert Smith sharing the detective agency in that case. And just, tons after that, especially ABC shows and this was an ABC show as well.
Right. Although it was independently produced. But yes. Like I think that in a way they more or less are doing this where, some episodes are they basically have 2 different crews going. They had 2 different
exactly.
They had 2 different first ADs, different directors of photography. So those crews would kind of switch off back and forth. And since there was since there's no continuing characters, that made that part of it at least a lot more fluid. But but still, it's way more daunting to put on an anthology show than it is to, you see, the thing here is that if only Jeff Parker were here, we could just talk about Man Who Shot Liberty Valance for the next 20 minutes. And, like the way that we did after we stopped recording last week.
Was that insane? I know we essentially did another podcast off the air.
And it was total, like, we just started talking about it. It just came up for some reason. And then we just all start passionately, insightfully talking about Man Who Shot Liberty Valance. And like at the end of it was like, wait, we should have just been recording that. So because it was so kind of like spontaneous and
again, this is why I enjoy doing Scene Missing and what have you seen lately and what intrigues you. And that's the great thing about Turner. Man, I'll tell you, you don't get that channel that Hillary Barta when we do Scene Missing. It's called Movies, and it's made by the MeTV people, but it is purely a movie channel. They run uncut as far as length. They will opaque nudity if they are showing films that have nudity, but it's amazing, and they really go deep in noir and they really go deep in 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s films. And then when they're over, they cut to a terrible Hollywood show it's literally just trailers all stitched together. And this year in 1963, The Time Machine with Rod Taylor came out, and then they show the trailer, things like that. It's very, very easily edited together. But yeah, they do it. I mean, they show movies at their full length, and yeah, they just really noir gems, or completely all the films that Cagney and Betty Davis and Bogey would complain about that Warner Brothers made them do. Right. That were just, we got to show something. Boom, here's a movie and stuff.
Wait,
and
so the scene missing with Hillary, it's like Russian roulette, and you're just doing one on any given movie that comes up on that channel?
Well, we'll want to talk noir for the most part, but every now and then, I'll throw in other, 50s movies, programmers, and things that I had never seen before. Like I talked about the Falcon series of detective movies that started with George Sanders, and then his brother Tom Conway took over as the character's brother as well.
Tom from the who was in two of the Val Lewton movies. He's not in The Leopard Man, but he's in Cat People and The Seventh Victim. Victim. If you take one thing away from this Outer Limits podcast, it's go watch The Seventh Victim, because it's
100%. I would agree with that, and even Leopard Man, just because it's a Val Lewton.
Really good too. It's a little bit more like it feels a little more programmery than the other ones do. It doesn't have quite personality, but it's also Jacques Tourneur directed it, who directed the Cat People and I Walked with a Zombie, and went on to direct possibly the greatest film noir ever, Out of the Past. I will, if there's some other podcaster out there who really wants to do a Val Lewton series, then I'm 100% on board for that.
It's cheating on me, absolutely.
I'm just putting it out there because John is overtaxed here, right? We can't put anything else on John.
Caught me on a bad day. You just caught me on a bad day. That's all that's for you.
Willing to do that Val Lewton podcast. It'll only be like 7 episodes long. It's good.
Absolutely. I'm going to check and see if I think there's one more comment, and then here we go. Let's see. I'm taking notes. Thank you, Jamie. Absolutely, man. That's honestly, that is the joy of doing it. I've got a scene missing coming up. I've cheated on all of us and spoken to an action hero that has been making action movies in the last 10 or 15 years. Alexander Nevsky, a former Mr. Universe, in the mold of a Schwarzenegger, has been making these movies in the last 15 years or so. Was
Alexander Nevsky, the hero of Novograd, the Russian folk hero.
Yes, I know. Isn't that awesome? That is his stage name.
Okay.
And no, this would be the man who made great movies with Casper Van Dien, like Showdown in Manila.
Right.
And Red Prophecies is his new movie that is coming out very soon. Magic Man and Treasure Raiders with Tia Carrera.
Casper Van Dien, Tia Carrera, and Sergei Eisenstein. That's
indeed. Great guy, tremendous guy, and I am fascinated by the people, because I always feel like our Outer Limits is kind of our sister podcast too when we do a scene missing and stuff, and obviously with all the references we make. But I am certainly fascinated, much like the independent producers of the great decades of Hollywood, these guys that are self-made men. He was a fitness. I mean, because he was a Mr. Universe of Russia, he had a fitness television show on Russian television in the 90s, very successful. Came to LA in the early 2000s, was a Mr. Universe, so he sought out Schwarzenegger, and Schwarzenegger gave him the advice of, you got to make your own stuff, man. Don't wait for an opportunity. And truly, the great inspiring story. And yeah, I mean, these are C-level action films. And I mean, really, just look at the credits. They speak for, like I said, Tia Carrera, Crystal Loken from Terminator 3, Michael Madsen, Eric Roberts, all these, guys that are working actors and working, best of the best, those martial arts movies that Eric Roberts makes, all that stuff.
No, I am in no way, putting all that down. I'm absolutely every level of show business and movie making and all that sort of stuff. Like, I'm more fascinated by the niche stuff like that you know.
Yeah.
that people don't really necessarily talk about and stuff. I mean, I know that's really interesting.
Yeah, well, his PR guy. I'm every now and then I get very interested. I look very interesting PR lists, and it's like, hey, do you want to talk to so and so? And it's like, yeah, actually, that would be cool. So I watched a couple of his movies, and I talked to him this afternoon. I'm going to put it out at the beginning of next week. He kind of insisted to do Skype video as opposed to doing StreamYard, and I'm like, okay, no problem. And again, I'm sure he's a little technically, not as hip as far as streaming and stuff. Could not have been nicer. Was a former amateur boxer. We had a nice tangent with him talking about the boxing scene, and really just this cool self-made guy that he's made 8 movies, and it's like that's fantastic and good for you, man. And again, and dealing with COVID, he had shot this Red Prophecies, his new movie. It's kind of a political conspiracy movie, and it's got Eric Roberts, like I said, Michael Madsen, and Casper Van Diem. Van Diem plays a Russian policeman. He plays an American policeman, kind of in that same way that Van Damme would play Americans, despite the accent and stuff. And I love it. God bless him for doing it, man. But seriously, really cool guy. I'm really looking forward to putting it out on Monday. Alexander Nevsky, everybody. And several of his movies, if you have Amazon Prime, are free on Amazon Prime. So it's kind of cool. And yeah, just really, it was very interesting hearing how he's putting these movies together, and he likes being an action hero. He likes being the new Dolph Lundgren, and very much inspired by those 80s and 90s action films that Redbox kind of movies and stuff like that. Yeah. So there you go.
All right, great. So The Outer Limits.
We're done. Yes. Here, if John doesn't record a podcast for 24 or 48 hours, then we file a missing person report with him with the Chicago Police Department. Indeed.
I thought we were going to be there at the beginning of this.
I understand. I know. I was 3 minutes late. I do apologize.
Somebody over there with the sniffer dogs or whatever.
So episode 9 next week of The Outer Limits, and is that
Corpus Earthling?
Indeed, and that is again Robert Culp finishing his trio of Outer Limits episodes. I don't know why, but I guess I used to think Soldier was also a Culp, but that's Michael Ansara.
Michael Ansara.
It's another. It's the second of the Harlan Ellison.
This is the second of his trio. Like he,
Third.
Yeah. No, because the third one's in the second season. It's the Demon with.
Oh yeah, that's right. Demon with Glass Hand is the second season. You're right. Excuse me. It is the second episode.
And Also, the next one, Salome Jens. That's how you say her name. Is in it from Deep Space Nine. She was the main evil changeling lady, and
an amazing Rock Hudson, John Frankenheimer film.
Yeah, in Seconds as well. Yeah, she's fantastic in that. And that's
folks. I was going to say, truly, as opposed to tonight's episode that we had to watch Seconds. It's an incredible black and white late '60s movie. It is the most unconventional Rock Hudson movie you'll ever see, and it's a great science fiction film that is very cool, very bizarre in sections, and Salome Jens and Rock Hudson are very cool in that movie.
Of its time, but it's also pretty interesting. And James Wong Howe was the director of photography.
I didn't know that. That's awesome. Wow. Yeah. And the great John Randolph, great character part in the first part of the film.
Right.
So
what you're taking away from this podcast is go watch Seconds, go watch The Seventh Victim, and then also watch Corpus Earthling and meet us back here next week.
Absolutely, man. Yes, watch other things than tonight's episode, no question. So, yeah, Gabe, I thank you, and we'll have more fun next week. And I promise to get my nap in before the episode, so I'll be much more bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. But everybody, thank you very much. Tomorrow night on Word Balloon, we're going to play horror trivia with a couple comic book favorites, Tim Seeley, Mike Morisi, and working on some other people, but they haven't been confirmed yet. But at least those two will be. I will only be the quiz master. I will not be part of this.
I could do that horror trivia though.
You want to come join us tomorrow night? We're doing it. Yeah, it's 7:00 your time. I don't know if you want to. I don't know if you blow your Friday talking our nonsense.
Depends if I get my storyboard worked out.
Fair enough. Excellent. All right, Gabe. All the best. And once again, folks, if you're not aware, Green Lantern Earth 1 Volume 2 out there.
Yeah.
And anything else?
In December, I think or I'm not actually sure which issue it's going to be in, but I co-wrote with Karina Becco and drew a Batman Black and White story that's part of that new Batman Black and White relaunch thing that they're doing, and I'm very proud of that. I think it's some of the best work I've ever done.
Attaboy. Fantastic. All right, everybody, thanks a lot for watching To the Outer Limits. Stay safe, stay happy,